parents need support around it's okay not to enable your kids. It's
Yes.
okay to say you're on your own
Yeah.
and I'm here, but I'm not going to, build your life for you.
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly, and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Hello, today I welcome back Dr. Lauren Behrman. You likely remember my episode with Lauren. It was episode 21, where we discussed the collaborative family law practice and how this new chapter of family law has been a much more civil means of moving families through the divorce process, mainly in a way that it protects children even more so than once previously had been seen. But today I wanted to have Dr. Lauren back because, well, first of all, we discussed a little bit about how common it is actually for collaborative family law professionals to have shared the burden of emotional fragility as it relates to separation and divorce, um, and the pain that accompanies these life-changing events. It's actually quite common that these professionals, whether they're financial, analysts that help the couples through divorce, or lawyers or mental health professionals, it's actually very common that these professionals themselves have moved through divorce. And it's with this sort of empathy and compassion that has made their work even more meaningful with their clients. But secondly, and I mean, the main reason I had Lauren back is that we felt it was important, as two therapists, as two professionals, as two mothers, having now reached what I like to say the second season of our lives. Um, we thought it was important to speak about how it's time to give ourselves permission to just do you, or just do me. After, like both of us spoke about having adult children in the home, and how it's very easy to continue to enable um, our children, and have them continue to live in the home, um, and way past beyond the adult years after turning 18, for example. So we we just both agreed that it's a topic that's worth having an open discussion about, and for women to sort of come together honestly and openly, and yeah, basically give ourselves permission to let go of that mummy guilt. It's like, okay, We raised our kids, they're 18, and it's time to, allow them to spread their wings and leave the family nest. So with that, welcome to episode 26. Enjoy. So today I have with me Lauren from a few episodes back, and I was interested in having Lauren back because we are going to talk a little bit about a different subject today, other than divorce and collaborative practice. Well, we will talk a little bit more about that, but we want to discuss. We both have a lot of interest in raising adult children now, and what that looks like in our own homes and in, I think, many other homes. So welcome back, Lauren.
Thanks, Luella. Thanks for having me back.
Okay. So before we begin speaking about adult children, I guess the topic is adult children staying in the family home, which seems to be a lot longer than, our generation did growing up. We are going to speak a little bit about that because when Laura and I first started talking, just about what Lauren could bring to the podcast, all of a sudden we got on this tangent. I don't know how it actually happened, but we were just talking about our adult children in the home, and it seemed like Lauren shared a lot of commonalities as I did in terms of what our views of that was. And yeah, at that time we just said, we're going to have to do two different podcasts, or episodes. So here we are. But before doing so, I wanted to ask you, Lauren, a little bit about, before I pressed record today, we were discussing the, I guess, the percentage or proportion of professionals that work in collaborative law that have experienced their own separation and divorce themselves. In your 20 years experience, Lauren, could you speak a little bit about that?
It's anecdotal, of course. I mean, I don't have any hard data. Yeah. In my practice group that I've been a member of since 2006, we trained in 2004, but it was only lawyers prior to that. But in 2006, they opened it up to mental health and financial professionals. It's my experience that about, I would say almost 80% of my colleagues, the mental health professionals and the lawyers and the financial professionals, have either experienced a parental divorce when they were children, or when they were young adults, or they've had their own divorce and separation experience, or both. Mm-hmm. And it does feel to me, I don't know if you've seen the Simon Sinek's TED Talk about starting with why.
No.
Why we do what we do.
Okay.
There's a lot in there about really understanding what draws us, what inspires us, why we choose the work we choose, and how powerful it is if you can express that to others, why you do what you do. I certainly know that my interest in divorce work was initially guided by my experience of my own parents' divorce when I was in my college years. I guess I was about a junior in college, and what impact that had on me. Mm-hmm. And fast forward to my own personal experience of divorce as a mother of 3 young children, 5, 7, and 9, and just hanging on for dear life because of my experience as a child, thinking, "I would never do this to my children. I could never do this to my children." And then recognizing that the pain of my marriage was, how can I do this to myself?
Mm-hmm.
And what am I doing to, for my children to raise them in a household where they're not having a model of a healthy healthy relationship
Mm-hmm.
between two adults.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, really tipped the scale for me, thinking that if I were to stay in that marriage, that my children would never learn what a loving, intimate adult relationship and a partnership would look like.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important what you said just there because that the shame and guilt that comes with that. I just, you know, as a therapist, I just when clients share that with me, I just I just feel for them so much because I don't, no one should feel that shame and the guilt, even though yeah, you can't but help that. I suppose as a mother, right? A caregiver, a nurturer. And I think in our minds, we're always thinking it's all about the kids. They're the most important. And then you have, I think that binary, s- thought or struggle is like, but am I the most important? Is my mental health the most important? Or is the impact of what this divorce could be on the kids, and I think it's a constant struggle for so many parents out there that are facing a crumbling marriage sort of thing. What do I do? What's the best thing to do? And I mean, you mentioned 80% is sort of where like you say, it's anecdotal, but that's where you feel is correct information, that 80% of those that work in family law collaborative practice have gone through their own separation and divorce. And you saying that, I'm thinking, I'm thankful. That's great, because when people go through it themselves, then they have a lot more empathy for the individuals they are then helping to go through
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, or their parents when they were
Right.
children. I do think that is what often draws people to work in this field,
Mm-hmm.
seeing from their own experience what was missing, what was needed,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to help people, find a better way to
Mm-hmm.
protect their children more, to work together as parents. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about this all the time, that if you end a business relationship, you don't have to then do the most important thing in your adult life together to raise children.
Yeah.
So it's really critical that we have professionals who can help people trans transition their families and still remain parents and not adversaries, not enemies.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be on the same team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think it's a bit, peace of mind for those individuals you work with, when they walk into your office, for them to know that you've gone through the same thing, and that
Mhm.
you survived, and your tips, your suggestions are probably even just that much more meaningful to them. Yeah.
I do think it's comforting, and, one can be seen much more as a guide in a sense than, the sage.
Right.
People who see you as having your own humanity, your own vulnerability,
Hmm.
having been through your own struggles. as a
Yeah.
human,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we are only human.
Exactly. Yeah. I know some people think that therapists, aren't, or they know it all, but we definitely have our own emotional struggles, our own relationship struggles. And yeah, the more we are vulnerable with ourselves and, with our clients to some extent, I think the
Mhm.
more appreciated they are of us. So,
And
yeah.
our own mommy guilt.
Oh, mommy guilt from the, I always say from the moment you give birth, in that operating room or wherever you might have had that your birthing experience, from the second you give birth, it's like you are guilt ridden, I feel, as a woman, as a mother. And I don't know, it maybe other people will argue this, but it's different than a man. I don't, it's just different. It's like, because it's instant, like, will I have enough milk? Um, will I have enough energy to wake up during the night? Will I, and it just continues from that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's part of the territory.
Hmm. I mean, it's beautiful, I think, in reflecting back, there's no, I know myself, there's no other way I would have wanted it, right? Like, I mean, it's one of, I think, the most beautiful memories we have as women is giving birth to our children. And I mean, I don't remember the pain in the moment. I know it wasn't fun. I know that, but I think within an hour after, giving birth, like, you actually just, it's a miracle. You forget the pain. You forget the pain. Um, so that, and I think that's done, through the will of God, so that you can have other children after that. But yeah, I'm not saying that, men, fathers don't have their own guilt about being, the best father, attentive father, but it's different. It's just different. Um, so let's talk a little bit about uh, the, mummy guilt, post maybe 18. Um, I mean, I don't know about you, but, well, what let's say, even, raising children through the different stages of life. I mean, I know that some of my female clients will say, I love the baby years. Others will say, it wasn't for me. I thrived during the teenage years, and others just wish they could have skipped that whole process. Um, and then there's the adult years. So how about just saying pre-18, pre-adult? What's your memories of the most difficult, or the most favorable for yourself?
And it, each stage had its challenges. Each stage had its, you know, incredible joy and beauty as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say. I had big challenges with special needs um,
Mm,
in my raising my kids. Um, and, many, there were many times that were really, really challenging. But also, I did love having babies and toddlers, preschoolers. I loved watching them blossom and develop into,
mm-hmm.
people who could walk and talk and say no and have
Mm-hmm.
a self and name themselves. I enjoyed all the stages, and I also was oftentimes exhausted and
Mm-hmm.
really challenged. Adolescence was pretty tough in my home.
Mhm.
Really from the time my kids were, um, my oldest was 9, my youngest was 5. I was a single mom for 5 years and then, um, remarried. So, um, that was also
Mhm.
really, played into my experience. But adolescence was really challenging, in the suburbs where we lived. There was just a tremendous amount of permissiveness around drinking
Mm.
and, and drugs, and I was not nearly as permissive as some of the other parents,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that was a big challenge with my kids who were like, "Why can't you be"
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
This one's mom smokes weed with us and,
Yeah.
and they give us beer and, was
Mhm.
yeah, they were born in the '90s, and so that would have been like the teens,
Yeah.
the 20s, 12, 13, 14, 15, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
But as they were, kind of adolescing and coming of age, and there was just a lot of, it was a lot of challenge,
Mhm.
a lot of permissiveness, a lot of, uh, I
You
don't
know,
know about
w-
where you
well,
raised your children.
yeah, no, I wouldn't say that was really uh, y- y- no, I think I was quite lucky in that way. My kids seem to have a pretty level-headed approach towards drugs and drinking. Fingers crossed. My youngest is 17 right now. I'm not saying that it's I'm past it. I'm not past it yet, but so far so good. And but you just speaking like that, in the back of my mind too, I'm thinking, and I think it's even more complicated in a way for some of our parents right now that are also have the burden of you know gender and all the different gender equality and you know
Gender fluidity
yes,
and, um,
yes,
you know, much, much more openness around
yeah,
unhappiness with one's gender and
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And even as I think as wonderful as things have been in terms of speaking openly about mental health, I think it also in some ways has, I'm not going to say complicated things, but I mean, I don't know about you, but I can I can pretty much say in almost 100% certainty that if the word anxious or anxiety, you know, came up in the classroom when I was 16 or 17, I would have thought of that term as being something like, oh, I'm anxious to begin, summer. It had nothing to do, like, mental health was not really spoken about, or I'm
Mhm.
struggling with mental health. So as great as it is, like, that children can talk about it, and I mean, holy smokes, like sometimes I have 8-year-olds coming in the room talking about their mental health, and I'm just like, I didn't even know these words when I was your age.
Mhm.
What is this healthy, or is this, I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with that as a therapist. What's your thoughts?
It's certainly much less stigmatized and much
Mhm.
more open, and I think for the most part, that's a a blessing
Yeah.
that people will seek help and speak about anxieties and
Hmm.
depression and their
Mm.
fears, and but it is, I mean, it's become certainly within certain segments of the adolescent and young adult population, almost like a something to be proud of and to
Mhm.
broadcast,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, I'm bipolar and
Mhm.
I'm,
Yeah.
uh, I
Yeah.
think I'm on the spectrum.
Yeah. 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 In like in now you make me in every sort of way too, even like I have ADHD. It's just it's almost yeah. I That's a tricky one.
Mhm,
I think you're right. It's nice that a child is aware that that they have anxieties around certain things, and I think it's great to share that perhaps with your friend. You don't have to be embarrassed about being anxious and about certain things, but you're right. If you're using it sort of as I'm not going to say attention seeking, but who knows, maybe sometimes it is. I mean,
mhm.
y- I think that children, every child wants to be seen, they want to be heard. I mean, that's just part of being a kid, that's we all did it, right? Look at me, mom, look at me jump, look at me
Mhm.
swim, look at me. I mean, that's just who a child is. But
But defining themselves in a pathological way, I
right,
think that's where it becomes, if it's attention seeking in a pathological
right,
way.
right. Yeah. 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 So yeah, I think the challenges, that we had in raising our children are certainly worth speaking about, but I think there's an extra layer here. And I mean, we're not going to even get into um uh, mobile devices
Right.
and all that stuff. I mean, that's just another extra burden, I think.
They have so much more access at such a much earlier age
Mhm.
to, and sometimes, I'm hearing the lyrics of the music and it really, and the content on,
Mhm.
television, what they have access to on the internet.
Mhm.
Just type in a few words in a search engine and
Ex- ex-
you know, I often think about what challenges my mother had raising my brother and myself in the 50s.
yeah.
And it's like, it was so much easier. It
I
was so much less complex.
I
The
told
complexity now is just
right.
huge.
No, 100%. I mean, okay, so, maybe, I mean, I think their struggles were more like, oh my gosh, you took a sip of, I don't know, whose beer, or you smoked a cigarette. Oh my God, you're 12. I mean, now it's, you become addicted to porn at 8 years old. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing,
Mm,
in the room. And I mean, I don't think you can compare the two.
really not. Not only that, I mean, at that time, everything was so much easier
Mhm.
and simpler
Yeah.
in terms of role expectations, and it was, you came out of college, you were able to find a job that allowed you to rent an apartment.
Yeah.
Now it's not, sometimes not at all possible.
No.
The just the whole economy and the way in which um, those entry level jobs are, they don't pay a living wage.
No, you're right. So let's get into that a little bit. Like, I mean, I know that we have some differences probably here in where I am in Canada versus where, where you are in the US, but I don't think it's that much difference. So how old are your children right now?
My children are 24, 26, and 28.
Okay, okay. So and are they living at home?
Uh, one is living on his own
Okay,
in another state.
okay,
One was living on her own in another state and moved back in with her dad.
okay.
And the youngest also finished college. And this was hard in the midst of COVID. It came
Hmm.
came back to New York and also moved in with dad.
Hmm.
And they came back, especially the youngest, with this expectation that everybody, all their friends, would be taken care of by their parents,
Mm.
which is also, I think, part of that kind of suburban, that the culture where my kids were raised, which was not what I believe really to be the healthiest for the kids
No.
in terms of establishing their adult life and finding their way, finding their independence, even if it means that they share a house with 6 or 7 other people,
Right.
and they figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm guessing you at 18 left your family home.
I never went home. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
After college, yes, I
Yeah,
left.
yeah, to study and you were on your own.
Mhm.
18 and onward. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't even discussed whole idea of coming back home or
Coming back home to live after I had gone to college was not not only was it not an option, it
no.
had absolutely no no resonance for me. There was no reason that I would ever want to do that.
No, exactly. So, I mean, what are we doing wrong? I think we're making it way too. I mean, I know it's part of society, and like I know it's a societal thing. It's just like it's normed, to come back to, or I should say, well, the way I feel, here where I live is, I think a lot of parents have the perspective of, hey, you can stay here during your university years, as long as you're going to university, as long as you're working hard towards your degree, we'll support you here.
Mhm.
Maybe some parents ask for rent. Maybe, I mean, we don't. Um, there's just a certain expectation that you do fairly decent and that you want to graduate and get out of here. But um, it's I think it's a really heavy burden on the parents in that respect. It's sort of like many extra years of support. I mean, financial support, like
Mhm.
very draining. That's after, like, I mean, I just want to say this quickly too. Is it's sort of I mean, we come from, I mean, Canada a lot. Like I see this a lot of young males. I mean, they love to pursue the sport of hockey, and the amount of money that goes into, supporting, like starting. Let's be honest here, starting at probably 6, 7, 8 years of age. That's just one example of a sport that the
Mhm.
parents have contributed to for, my gosh, I think sometimes it could be 50 up to 15 years. And
Well, the same, here, there are many different things that kids get involved in that are extremely expensive for parents to support, and that they, we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have, kids who are on these travel soccer teams or travel lacrosse or baseball, or even, skating, ice skating competitions or dance teams. And I have people I know who kids are on sailing teams, competitive sailing teams. And then there are all kinds of, regattas all over the place, or
Exactly.
tournaments all over the place, and travel all, and expensive equipment. And
Mm-hmm.
we support our, kids in developing their interests. And
But at what point, I guess, yeah, we have to get back to like, at what point do the kids, take the responsibility of that, and your adult children saying, hey, this sounds wonderful. I love to be playing hockey, in the States, when I'm 26, pursuing my dream of being on the NHL. But at what point do they start taking responsibility? But they can't, because they've been, dedicated to this sport, which means they haven't been working part-time. They haven't been working at all. And then, so they don't have the money to support themselves.
mhm,
And I mean, I just think like the domino effect of all that is your, parents who could once retire at 55 are now working till they're, in their 70s,
right.
just because.
But it is definitely a family systems issue, because there are parents who do that and sacrifice their own lives, their own retirement, their own um, kind of ability to live as they wish. And and then there are parents who say, you know what, you're on your own.
Yeah.
I've given you um, I've given you a wonderful upbringing. I've
Yeah.
given you a college education, and it's time for you to spread your wings and fly.
Mhm.
I will help you to a certain extent, to, but I can't do it for you.
Right. So you've had those conversations?
Many times,
Yeah. Okay.
many times with, and it's really tricky, because the you love for your children to avoid the potholes that you stepped in yourself,
Yeah.
but really they need to learn by trial and error. They need
Hmm.
to step in their own potholes often.
Right.
And oftentimes you try and they don't listen anyway. They're
Hmm. Hmm.
they're not interested.
And I think, they're also, you know, well, by not giving them the opportunity to step in those potholes, to live on their own, to, watch their wallet. Um, I think you're really doing them a disservice in life, right?
Mhm.
Because, yeah, I mean, it's you're just kind of, you're keeping them stuck at a really immature, um uh, needy, uh
You're enabling the dependency
yeah,
and giving a message that you don't have faith that they can do it,
right, yeah. And
where it's it's really important, I think, to give them the message. I know it's hard, and I know you can,
mhm,
and
mhm,
I'm here for you to bounce ideas off, to give you
mhm.
resources. I'll help you figure out, how to get your medical insurance, but
Yeah,
I can't do it for you.
right. um And what has their response been to that?
It varies. I am seeing my 28-year-old beginning to really get it and have a shift in mindset.
Good.
I know I have to do this myself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help me. And I know that I had to really step back and let go of the outcome. And
Okay.
that was very hard.
Right.
It's very hard, but it is, if you don't, all you, at least for me, was pushback and a lot of resistance and a lot of dependency, just
Mm-hmm.
fostering a lot of dependency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so, it's a tough message, but the children, the young adult children, they make their choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're enabling them, you're helping them make choices that aren't even good for them.
No, exactly. And I think, I mean, as you're speaking to, like, I thought of myself, like, I could see myself sitting in my apartment, when I was 19 or 20, apartment that I shared with my sister when she was working, I was in university. And like, I always think, but those were some of the best years of my life. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't have a car. I I did, but it was basically IKEA furniture or something you found,
Yeah, you
whatever.
made a table out of a milk crate and a piece
Ex,
of wood, but
ex,
it was
yeah,
yours.
it was yours. Yeah, and you're on your own, and it felt so
Right.
good. Like, I mean, to not have your mother nag you that your room's dirty or whatever. And I think that's what those kids aren't seeing. And yeah, I don't know. Um, so are you saying that some of that guilt is finally dissipating from you right now?
I think I'll have mommy guilt until I die,
Right.
a certain amount of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the hardest things for us during COVID was the last child had graduated college and it was time to put the house on the market.
Mm.
And I mean, he easily would have moved back in and
Mm-hmm.
been really happy to be
Mm-hmm.
there. Um, and but I know that if we didn't take charge of our own lives in this chapter, it's not a dress rehearsal. We don't have infinite life.
No.
And certainly we don't have infinite years of being, healthy and mobile
Yeah.
and able to kind of enjoy some of the things we've worked so hard for.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that even though, like, I'm guessing, like, what you're describing is that there is a family home, and after post graduation, he would have loved to just kind of move back to the family home, but you and your husband wanted to sell that home and move to a different location. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I had been actually, I had lived in the city, in New York City,
Okay.
and my office was in New York City, but I lived in New York City prior to marrying the father of those children.
Okay.
And I loved it. I loved the energy. I
Mm-hmm.
loved the access to, um, culture and
Mm.
art and um,
Mm-hmm.
just, all the resources of the city and the vibrancy of it. And many of my friends were there. My brother was there. I really wanted, and my mom's 93. I wanted to live in the city for years and I kept putting it off, putting it off, putting it off.
Hmm.
And the third child actually had a kind of an extra year of college. So we had kept the house even that much longer than we
Oh, okay.
had planned. And then, so we ended up moving to the city a month before the lockdown, um, in which case we didn't feel so safe in the city.
No, no.
But I had tremendous amount, and he put a tremendous amount of guilt about all his friends, their parents had that kept the houses, and the children came back, and they still lived at home, and why was I doing this?
Oh boy. Yeah.
It was tough, but I did feel like it was what we had to do to save ourselves. And
Yeah. Yeah. So you stood your ground, and it's kind of resolved itself now. Like it's
it's
he's
resolved itself. That young son ended up moving in with his dad,
okay.
although his dad is absolutely charging rent and
Oh.
making him pay for his car insurance and make a payment towards his car, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really kind of not trying not to enable the dependence.
Yeah. Yeah. So and so you're but you're not in New York City now though.
No,
No.
no, there was
Yeah.
a whole kind of odyssey during COVID where we went from the city to live in the house we had moved out of, which was now staged with fake furniture, and
Mm.
we lived in the office, which was in the basement. Was the only room that had our furniture in it,
Mm.
and then ended up coming to the Berkshires where we had a summer home in
Okay.
Massachusetts, and
Yeah.
we ended up spending more time up here, and then selling that home, buying a more permanent home here.
Okay.
And
So
yeah,
yeah, you followed your dream.
mhm,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
definitely my dream, and love it when the kids come to visit and they have
Mhm.
a great time. And I visit them and talk to them on the phone. But I think that's as it should be.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I think they will come to appreciate that if they haven't already, that you know, they need to
Yeah.
allow mom to fulfill her dream because mom and dad, mom and stepdad, they need to be happy. If they're not
Mhm.
happy, then, you know, how are we as a family, right? But yeah, allow them to take their time into understanding that, I suppose.
Mhm. It's so interesting. We live very close to a farm, and we often see the cows, um, and these tiny little baby cows, they're often running within, days of birth.
I love that. You're so
And
lucky. Yeah.
and you know, we are human children,
Hmm.
30 years sometimes of you know,
Exactly. It's
of
crazy.
tending to our young.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly they need parenting at 21 or 23, certain, but it's a different kind of parenting.
Exactly.
It's
You know,
a different kind of parenting, really.
it it is like from, I think what you're saying, speaking from the way we grew up, from the way, our children sort of expect us to parent them right now. It's so different. I mean, I think, at 21, 22, whatever, 25, I think the only time I expected my parents to guide me might have been financially. It's sort of like, oh, you know, but purchasing a house, or investing, or yeah, how do I change the oil, or how do I'm thinking of this car. um but nowadays it's like, what's for dinner, and why aren't there any groceries in the house. It's
Right,
sort of, it's
right.
all this self-righteous, like, you know
And that's what I had with my youngest son when he was in college and finishing college. And when he would be home for a summer, it was just that,
yeah.
what's for dinner and what's for dinner. And I may not come back for dinner, and I'm not probably not going to tell you whether or not you should make enough dinner for me. I'll just either show up and be annoyed that you don't have enough, or,
Exactly.
you know, and
Yeah.
it, it's like, okay, I think you're ready to do this yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, this again?
Mhm.
We always eat this. Or, I mean, yeah, but like you're saying, just not even giving the um what's the word? I think the respect to even say, I'm home tonight for dinner, I'm not home, this
Yeah.
evening.
Mhm.
Or yeah, I mean, and then there's the whole maintenance of the house. um we could go on and on, right? I mean, it's just, it never ends. So yeah, I think it needs to be discussed more. I think it needs to be discussed, like maybe we have support groups for,
Right.
like for parents.
Parents of older kids. And I
Yeah.
think they absolutely do need, um, parents need support around it's okay not to enable your kids. It's
Yes.
okay to say you're on your own
Yeah.
and I'm here, but I'm not going to, build your life for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is how I plan to support you. But these are the expectations I have of you. And yeah, I mean, I just feel, especially financially, I mean,
Mhm.
it's I think it's enough to say that I'll support you emotionally. I
Mhm.
I will support you, yeah, like with financial guidance, because I mean, that's the wisdom that a parent
Mhm.
should bring to their children, right? This is what it's like to go through a relationship. I've been there. Let me
Mhm.
guide you on that. Yeah, this is my knowledge about finances, and let me guide you on that. This is, how I purchased my car, and this is what you need to know. But no, I don't need to pick up your socks, and I don't need to make sure there's a meal for you every night. And yeah, and the other thing too, like, I mean, I and I think that this has all been really heightened with COVID as well, because not
Mhm.
only were our children home or living with us, our children are around us all the time.
Mhm.
It's like they're online university. They're
Right.
they're constantly around us. And that's just adult children. We're not even going to go into like those poor parents that had, young children at home with homeschooling. That's a whole nother topic, but we're just centering on adult children right now. But the other thing too is, like, sometimes, I mean, even though they're adult children, they're acting like they're, um, in grade two, with bickering and complaining, and like a little bit of, fighting amongst each other, and expecting mom and dad to pop in and, you know, tell your brother that, they need to get out of the whatever living room because you were there first, and it's just
Yeah.
sort of like, what am I doing? Like, you're 22. I don't
Mhm.
I don't need to be breaking up fights between you and your brother. That's the other thing.
But we have to be the ones, I think, who step back. We have to step back. As long as we lean into it,
Exactly.
we're engaging in it, we're enabling, and we're part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And it feels sometimes, is it cruel? Is it abandonment? What are we doing if we step back? And that's where the guilt comes in. But I
Yes.
think, you know, ultimately our job as parents is to give our children roots and wings. And
Hmm.
if we clip their wings, if
Hmm.
and they tend to regress when
Yeah.
they're home. I saw that with all of my kids, that they would regress and act like much younger kids
Yes.
when they were home.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think,
I think
I,
we maybe we need to be the trailblazers in this. I mean, I certainly have not heard a lot of people, talking about this, but I think it should be spoken about a little bit more. Um, yeah, just,
yeah,
like just because, as what you said, you had your son saying, well, so and so, my best friends, they're moving back with their parents, and or they're paying for their trip to Europe. Um, they're paying for um, you know, their master's degree. It's yeah. Uh, you know, it's nope, nope.
yeah.
It's called getting a job.
The thing that is true is that failure to launch. So many of those kids, when they come home,
Hmm.
they get stuck
Yeah,
and they just can't move forward.
right. They just
That's so
can't
hard.
fly. Yeah.
I'm wondering about your time.
Yes, I knew I need to run. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for this discussion.
You're so welcome,
Yes, and yeah, hopefully we'll both hear more about this topic in the future.
for sure.
Okay, so thanks for your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good talking with you, Luella.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.